Oh really? Is that you didn't seem bothered?
I was not bothered by it. So
Even
it's a competitive multiplayer shooter.
yeah, it's online only.
It's got bots.
Ooh.
Oh really? I don't know if it has. Apparently bots are coming to Fortnite, but the problem is I don't like the structure of Fortnite
Oh,
anyway.
right.
So
Even the fact that Batman, which you can actually see in that shot over there, good. There's a Batman menu. Even the fact that there's some sort of Batman involvement in Fortnite, I still thought no.
I know. But it's almost worth getting it just for the Batman content, but using bots, but then not enjoying playing the game.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it said on the trailer I watched for it, it said it had like Batman and Catwoman and I guess Robin, and it was just saying, oh, you become Batman, become the Dark Knight, and save Gotham. But when it's save Gotham, makes you think that it's like a one-player mode. I don't know enough about it, but it just, if there's any way I would get sort of forced to play Fortnite, it would be if there's a Batman content.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that'd be enough to be honest.
We could try it today. We could just install it seriously, and then uninstall
Could
it.
do actually, couldn't
Yeah, it would be intriguing to see, or even just watch a gameplay trailer because we know everything we needed from that.
If only there was some kind of program on the internet we could watch videos of people playing games.
There is Vimeo.
Oh yeah. I actually do use Vimeo sometimes to do movie reviews.
And Dailymotion as well. To do movie reviews.
Yeah, like they send the screeners through. I guess it's got different security protocols and
Oh,
stuff.
I thought you meant that you do upload videos behind my back, quite frankly.
Video reviews, God, no, that wouldn't be my style.
Yeah.
God, if I got caught on camera,
the film itself is 2 hours long.
on a single shot.
I notice you haven't come fully prepared with your sheet with notes on.
No, I don't need to because it's written there.
I'll edit that out. See,
Or will he?
this is episode 9, to be titled, obviously. And we're going to talk about Deadly Premonition Origins. I didn't know if there was a colon. I feel like there should be a colon in that. So
I hope there's a colon.
Deadly Premonition Origins, Gurgamoth, The Long Journey Home, Creature in the Well, Surge 2, and then Ripper's going to talk about Spyro Trilogy on the PS4, Zelda Link's Awakening, which will lead us into our topic for discussion of the week, which is about Dark Souls-esque difficulty. So, do you want to kick off first? Because I think Surge 2 will lead us nicely into that discussion, quite frankly.
Yeah, so Spyro Trilogy.
I've never played Spyro, by the way. I own it, I think, on the PS1.
See, I did play it. I played it the first time around on the original PlayStation, and I remember quite liking the kind of fluidity of the controls and stuff. I remember even at the time though thinking, not quite as good as Mario, is it though?
I suppose it's because you've got a D-pad on the PS1. It would have been.
Oh yeah, it would have been pretty rough.
Is it one of those games that has lots of famous voiceovers?
It does. I mean, you recognise like famous British actors. I mean, John Cleese and people like that are in there. I think it's what they sounded like in here, or it's actors who are hired to sound a bit like them. I'm not sure.
Much like Rampart, which I played the other day on the Master System, and at the very start it goes, "Ready, aim, fire," and I thought, is that Patrick Stewart? But it's clearly not, because why would he
So
do a
amazing.
voiceover for like Rampart?
So, yeah, I mean, I haven't played that much of Spyro Trilogy, but enough to realise that yes, it's still very like charming. I like the aesthetic and stuff. It's very playable, and it is still really quite fluid. The way that you can kind of you do the usual kind of jumping and around stuff, but you can also like dash and do the kind of floating glides and stuff. So it's quite fluid getting around the environment and stuff.
Is it like a linear thing where you move through, or is it just a hub world?
Semi-open levels?
It's just a hub world, is it?
Because of course it came out in the late 90s, so that everything 3D had to be like semi-open world. They didn't quite have the capacity to have proper open worlds, so they just have big, massive, sprawling levels. But it's not too irritating. It's not irritating in the same way that ukulele is irritating, like where it's just a vast like expanse of nothing in particular.
Oh.
It's a bit more contained than that. And my main issue with it is, and I don't know whether this is something I've looked in the options, but there doesn't seem to be a way of boosting it to 60 frames a second. I don't know why it's not 60 frames a second. It looks quite tasty.
But this is the thing, because the original Spyro was kind of lauded for its ability at the time graphically, like it was so fluid. So the fact that in the remaster that one aspect has been kind of taken a back seat. So
I have
it's
no
not
idea
for-
why. It's really weird. Like, there's no reason for it because it's like, it looks pretty, but it's pretty in a kind of Nintendo way where it's like actually quite simplistic but just stylized.
Looks, yeah.
So, in order to keep, if something like Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch can be 60 frames a second with everything that's going on in that game,
Yeah.
I don't see why Spyro on the PS4 Pro cannot be
Pro as well.
cannot be 60 frames a second. So that was a disappointing aspect, but I will play through it because it's kind of fun. The loading times, I'm not over the moon about. I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
Yeah, because every time you go into a loading screen, it goes into this kind of like thing where it's like it faces Spyro as he's flying through the air, and you can like press the shoulder buttons to make him roll and stuff and breathe fire and stuff. But you're thinking, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, is there any reason why this is taking? Like, I know it's only 20-25 seconds, but still.
I wonder how often the loading times.
Every time you make a transition between areas. So
So the rear transitions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the gameplay's pretty simplistic. There isn't really. It's really just go and defeat these enemies, trigger, unlock this statue or whatever, and then it's collecting really.
Okay.
It's just a collectathon, but yeah, it's pretty playable. It's a nice game, and
Is the music like sort of orchestral?
yeah,
Frequency
the production value is pretty amazing. So, but I only got it because it was on sale, and I remember it from my youth.
So Spyro Trilogy,
Yeah, it's
12 out of 10.
Would play again. And then there's Zelda: Link's Awakening, which has a connection to Spyro Trilogy insofar as I don't know why it's got frame rate.
It's got frame rate. Zelda. This is made by Nintendo.
Yeah, it's made by Grezzo, who did the ports of the I think they did like Ocarina and Majora's Mask on 3DS. So they did. I mean, they're good ports. So and it is a good port, and it's not just a port, obviously, of Link's Awakening on Game Boy because that would be broken.
It's going to be 2 megabytes in size.
It's a complete like HD remastering, although it has kept a lot of it the same. It has the same kind of like screen transition things.
Oh,
where
so, yeah,
some of it's scrolling and then some of it's like shifting from screen to screen. It's got 8-way directions and stuff.
I remember that game being really good on the Game Boy.
It is
But then
really
again, on the Game Boy, there weren't that many RPGs, and that was my thing. So I think I just remember that's probably the Zelda game I remember the most. Really,
it's really good. There are some bits where it is a bit. It's got the kind of slight impenetrability that early Zelda games had, where it's like, okay, I've literally no idea where to go next. And it is. I think it gives you a few more clues now.
so they've
So it pushes you towards a general direction, sort of thing. But some of the item like chains are quite ridiculous though. Like having to bring like, I don't know, you bring like a bag of seeds to some old woman who'll give you I don't know, like a pork chop that you have to go and bring to someone in a house, and then he'll give you something and you bring it to a fisherman, he gives you a fishing hook, and then you get a magnifying glass, and it's like, what, why are these people?
Just
Yeah, and it's like, and it's really just, there's nothing fun about trying to work out which character you're meant to be taking this object to.
because the enemies respawn as well, so you constantly backtrack.
It's
just an eagle. It's just I know what you mean. Like the backtracking and thinking I don't know where to go. It's not wandering around and then happening across what you're supposed to do next.
That part of it, yeah. The dungeons are really good though. Like they're really, really nicely, tightly designed, and like it's good that you go into a dungeon, and if you can make it into the dungeon, you can basically do the dungeon sort of thing. You've got what you need to do it.
You're not going to go in the get-go point and think, I haven't got
the hook shot right, brilliant, etc. So, but yeah, it's really, really, and it looks amazing because it's got like this kind of. It's not exactly like Octopath Traveler, but it has got a diorama effect where it has like a real force perspective thing going on. Whereas, so it looks really tasty.
Where do the frame rate issues come in then? Because it sounds like a pretty simple game.
It is pretty simple. I mean, it does look tasty, and there must be some post-processing effects which are causing it. It seems to happen. It's never consistently drops below 60 because it is normally 60.
Okay.
But it's when it transitions between screens or different environments, like it's streaming in or something, and that's when it stutters, which is annoying. It does mean that it's probably something they can fix, because it's not like it just can't handle it. It's just like, I don't know.
A smoothness in the transitions.
Yeah, but it's especially annoying because it's fine if something like this is 30 frames a second.
Yeah. Because it's not relying on like tight timing.
Yeah, it's not like Spyro where it's like extremely fluid and fast. It's like you're pretty slow and it's quite methodical. But what's annoying is when something starts at 60 and then will stutter occasionally, and it's like, that's really irritating, because you're like, well, I'd rather it was all 30 then.
I'm with you.
Just keep it all stable. It's not a stable frame rate, and that's the annoying thing about it. So,
and have you played it in handheld and docked as well, I guess?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same in both. I mean, I've seen people online saying, oh, I don't know it's anything, but they're just lying to themselves more than anything.
And that's the worst person to lie to, apart from me.
Exactly. Apart from the rest of the world.
I'll be watching this, Dad.
Yeah, so, but it's very good.
But yeah, so 2 good games then.
Yes.
Just marred slightly by technical
Yeah.
issues.
I think Link's Awakening, I reckon there's got to be a patch anyway for that, because it seems like something which could be fixed pretty easily.
Funnily enough, what was I playing? It's a game I did a review of a while ago called Redeemer, and this is the one, I think it's from 2 episodes ago, we talked about it, where it was like a top-down 80s style, like really violent brawler, and I was playing it with my friend Chris, and that was the one where I said the frame rate is really unstable and it's like really choppy when it gets busy, and he said, who cares, this is awesome. And I accidentally deleted our save game because I was showing another friend, Vinny, and when you start a game it deletes your old save file, and I had to start again with Chris, and as I was starting again it said, do you want to update a patch, and it's completely smoothed it out.
Oh, nice.
So it's quite nice to play through it again, because it and people who say the frame rate doesn't matter, the difference between people who say the frame rate doesn't matter should tell that to the developers of American Fugitive. But with this, I was going to say Renegade then, Redeemer, it's not totally smooth, but it's smoothed out so much more that it makes it just infinitely more playable, more fun, to the point that I don't mind doing 3 hours of the game again, because it's like, oh, this actually feels a lot better now.
Yeah. If only the same would happen with the Sexy Brutale on Switch.
Yeah, that's been a bugbear of yours for 1,000 years.
It's so annoying. It's so annoying when such a good game
this
is so broken. That's the really.
Have you checked? Have you like?
They did. I checked the first release 1 or 2 patches quite early on. I checked them, but neither of them did anything. They were just still had the same problem, because with that, it's not even just poor frame rate. It's like mid-game loading. Like you'll go up to a door because you have to like listen, because it's part of it's kind of stealthy. You go up to a door to like look through it. Look through the keyhole or whatever to see what's in the next room. It just hit like a loading cycle, and just the game will freeze. It'd be about 10-15 seconds sometimes. Like, what?
That sounds like something you'd have to do quite often in that game as well.
Yes, and when you're forced to play the game differently because
to work your way around
technical issues, that's when it becomes
problematic.
Not good.
So for me, this I'll just work down in order. So I got the it's called Deadly Premonition Origins. I don't know what the difference is, because I've played with Deadly Premonition. I've played it. This is the 3rd time I've worked through it, because the first time I was on the Xbox 360 and hit this is back in 2010 when it first came out, and hit a bug with it where it just basically corrupted my save file, and I was about 8-9 hours in and thought, I'm not doing like nearly 10 hours worth of gameplay again. And then it was on sale on Steam, so I bought it. You know what happened? Straight to the back of the queue. And I did play it, but this was again a few years ago, and it felt too fresh. So I installed it and I played the first half hour, and I thought, no, I'm still irritated by the fact that I have to work through it. So I got it for review on the Switch, which is perfect because handheld, chuck it on a bed sort of thing. And because it's been nearly a decade since I last played it properly, it still has the exact same issues it had then, which is it's a game made in the East for the West. So it's got this really, it's basically a game of Twin Peaks. There's so many references with like Coffee, the way he is, the sort of dual worlds, good and evil, like that sort of thing. And the combat is dreadful. They absolutely die. It's like a budget version of Resident Evil 4. It's over the shoulder fixed camera, but you fight the same enemies who make the same sounds pop out of the same walls, and they go on and on. Like you go into like a lumber mill, and it's just loads of corridors.
What kind of enemies are
They're really, when you see them, they're initially quite creepy because it kind of when you go into a sort of a combat area, all these like weird like blood vines will cover the exits and stuff, and you have to kind of work your way through. But it reminds me of the Persona games, the worst part of the Persona games, which is everything just seems to be corridors. Like infinite corridors. So you go into, whether you're in like a hospital or a police station or a lumber mill, when a combat section kicks off, you know it's going to be really like unrealistically designed endless corridors with just people coming out at you, and they're quite creepy. Like they kind of like the enemies from Project Zero, or Fake Frame, where they're like women who are like going, oh, and they're like upside down walking towards you, or like weird lumberjacks who kind of like sort of grow and like stumble and warp really quickly and like shimmer, and it's quite creepy.
Yeah.
But of course, after 10 minutes, because you're doing that 10 hours later fighting those same people, and the combat's initially fine, and I don't know if it was in the original, but they've now added like a lock-on button because it was so awkward. Because the Switch controller isn't great.
No, it's not. It's not the most refined.
It hasn't got as much real estate as the. Say that maybe the Pro Pad has, but so the combat is easily the worst aspect of the game, which is a shame because it genuinely feels like a totally unique game. There's no other game like it where it's completely balmy. You play basically a sort of Cal McLaughlin character who talks to someone called Zach in his head all the time and is constantly monologuing. And when you're driving around the town, like you can collect trading cards and talk to people because everyone's a suspect. You're trying to solve a murder of a young girl, not called Laura Palmer. And he's constantly just talking to himself about 80s action films and albums, and the atmosphere is wonderful, and even solving the crime, just talking to people, it's almost like you talk to someone and just sit back and you know it's going to either be weird or funny. And the music's like weirdly jaunty but repetitive. The music is amazing to the point that I would buy like a vinyl soundtrack of it, but it's overused so much that you just think, oh my god, if this had just had more of a budget, this would have been amazing.
Well, I wonder if the reason they've kind of rebranded it as Origins, because Deadly Premonition 2 is coming out next year.
Yeah, which I'll easily straight away buy and play because it is.
Yeah, if they can up the kind of production values, then
it could be something. I think if it's hard to recommend, because I would recommend like watching some gameplay footage of it, or maybe if you can get hold of a demo or on sale, because you either click with it or you don't, because it's such a weird game that you'll either find it inherently fun and just absorbing, just to sort of be in that world of Greenvale, I think it's called, or you'll just think this is just a really bad Resident Evil clone with clunky combat. I don't find this funny at all.
It's a possibility.
So yeah, I mean, I fall into the first because I do find it just really endearing.
Into the former camp.
Yeah, it is really weirdly endearing, and I am glad I played it again, and I've recommended it to a few people as well. But yeah, there's a collector's edition which is like 40 quid with all these extras. It's got quite nice pin badges and stuff, but I can see why some people would really love it. When people say they really love a game, you can, like an odd cult game, you can kind of see.
It does have that very culty quality.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel forced. It does feel like someone has said, I've got this idea for a game and I'm just going to do it. And
sometimes the most intriguing games can be the ones where it is an outsider's perspective on another culture almost, which is it's always weird when, especially like Japanese developers attempt to make something inherently American or something. It's really odd.
Like the problem we both have with sort of Japanese RPGs is when they just, you said before, they find 5 ways to say one thing, and it's just constant dialogue, constant nonsense, and usually a lot of teenagers in a military school.
Oh, definitely.
But with this, it has the same thing, but the dialogue's so like genuinely quirky that it's fun to sit through. Like, because he's the agent. What's his name? Oh, I've forgotten his name now. But the agent you play in it, York, is constantly like sort of talking to himself and out loud in front of people who are like aware that it's weird, so they're kind of like looking at each other as he's like turning away and monologuing and then turning back and they're like, what's wrong with you? So it is just funny. So that's a good one. The second one is Gurgamoth I had, which is a single screen multiplayer sort of game where it's like a brawler, but the sort of twist in this one is you don't have an attack, you have like a dash, so you sort of you have an environment with like spikes on the side or whatever, like balls,
you try and hit each other,
and you try to hit each other into it. And it's fine, but it's one of those games that there's such a densely populated genre on the Switch, those multiplayer party games, that it just didn't stand out. Look, I played it with, again, Chris and Faye for a bit, and it was kind of fun, but there's so many other games out there. including one I just got, which I'll probably talk about next week, called Chop, which is essentially just a more involved version of that. So it's, if you really like those games, it's kind of fun for a bit, but you wouldn't get much longevity out of it. Within like an hour, you would have seen everything the game has
I
to
assume
offer.
there must be people who will just pick up every kind of party game.
And just, chuck them on, just work through them.
Yeah.
And it's not bad, it's just very basic.
Yeah.
The Long Journey Home was one, it's a weird one because it's sort of set like you're in space, you're a crew of people, you choose the crew, and all of the selections up to the start of the game, you choose the crew, they've all got a backstory and all these different, these different skills and abilities, and it's quite involved. But then when the game starts, it just seems it's procedurally generated, so it's overly random, and you can almost sometimes just fail from the get-go. So it's designed for constant replays, and I would have rather it if it was just a streamlined experience that was just like really well written, as opposed to just procedurally generated and it's just random. So the game is sort of split into two halves. One of them is you're in space, and the way that you travel through space is it's almost like a blueprint, grid, and you're just a line on it, like an arrow on a line, and there are planets, and you can go into the planet's orbit, and then when you land on the planet to get resources and so on, you can meet different alien cultures and stuff. It almost turns to like a thrust gravity force thing, where you're like your little lander kind of has to work way down the screen against like the whatever the atmosphere and the wildlife and the wind and the weather's like on the planet, and kind of land on these certain platforms to explore. And it takes
Gravity Force. What a reference.
But do you know what the full game? Because that Gravity Force was the shareware game.
Yeah.
Do you know what the full game was called?
Gravity Force 2?
Gravity Power.
Gravity Power.
Nearly.
Because wasn't it? I remember the second one.
Gravity Force 2 was the split screen one that was amazing.
Wasn't that given away on Amiga Power? Maybe.
Yeah, because
I know that there
had
were
it from
massive fans of it.
It's really good.
Yeah, really cool.
What I liked about it was you start off on this sort of cave system, and then you've obviously like sometimes one of you would be dead before you met up to fight. Yeah, because you haven't
generally it would be, I think.
Loved it.
They're always so difficult. Those games.
Yeah, that bit high octane classic games.
So, The Long Journey Home, the procedural generation.
It's a bit of a.
I'm thinking of Captain Blood. I'm just gonna say.
What for this?
Yeah, like for Long Journey Home, because in that
you tell me off for my references.
A lot of that is like landing on these weird planets and meeting odd people, but also sometimes you land on planets there'll be nothing.
Yeah, that's what this is, because it's all about getting home, and so you get this. They have like a hyperdrive. They set it off. It takes them to the farthest reaches of space, and then you just have to work your way back to Earth. And it never, because what it did for me was it seemed to take all of the most interesting aspects of traveling through space and seeing these alien cultures and scrambling to get home, and focus on the most tedious parts of them. So traveling through space is just like looking at an arrow on a line, and then landing on it, and then doing a really basic landing sequence. Yeah. And then when you meet an alien culture, it's kind of like a couple of text boxes, and I felt like I really wasn't in control of anything. So but I can imagine that some people would love it because it focuses on the kind of what's the word? The kind of inertia of getting into the right orbit to kind of land on the planet, and the sort of technical aspects of managing all the resources and upgrading. If someone has the mind for that, fair play, they'll love it. But for me, it wasn't. It just felt like I'd rather be spending more time talking to these alien races, or even if it was just like a cockpit view, so I felt more involved in the space travel and wasn't just like watching an arrow move across a line, essentially.
Yeah, that sounds too much like what actual deep space travel would be like.
Yeah, it wasn't for me, but some people I can imagine would like really love it and pump dozens of hours into it. Creature in the Well was really, really good. It's kind of a pinball dungeon crawler. So
I saw a trailer for this, I think, on one of the Nindies.
It's really because it's really smooth, and which is key. And you play like this kind of robot, and you have like a sort of scrap pipe at the start.
Top down, like Hyperlight Drifter or Moonlighter or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of that top down, but sort of at an angle. So, but it's really the creature, the titular creature in the well is really buzzing. because you go into this huge complex in this really like sandy, dusty sort of post-apocalyptic future, and you're like this kind of cool robot. And when you go into this huge building, the creature is kind of this pair of like eyes that constantly stares up at you from this like black abyss, and every now and again it'll kind of interact with like whatever you're doing by reaching out these like really long skeletal hands. So it's quite buzzing, and it's constantly like taunting you and telling you you're going to fail, and you're going along, and a lot of you have to sort of light up. It's all about getting enough power because it's all about progress. So you go into a room, and so you walk up to a door in a room, because it's kind of like almost like Zelda, where you go in and you go into a room, you walk through, and then you walk through a corridor, get into a room, and you have to solve the puzzle in that room to get to the next one. It's quite cool. So it feels like you're always making progress, and it's all about having enough power to open the door. So you'll go into a room, and say there'll be these orbs that act as the pinballs, and you can hit them, like bang them, or you can kind of juggle them with like an energy sword to charge them up to hit them off against turrets or off bumpers to get enough power to open the door. And it does get challenging. There are some parts later in the game I was playing, I thought, my goodness. But the good thing about it is it's branching paths, and there are secrets and stuff, and you can upgrade your weapons. It's quite funny. You know, in some games where like the weapons all do the similar thing, but like with this you can have like a baseball bat or a frying pan, and because the audio design is so nice, and because it's so smooth, like, and because you hit things so much, like changing it to like a baseball bat with or like a dong dong of a frying pan is kind of fun enough to warrant having those things. It's just a nice little bit of variation.
It's an interesting twist on there. Upgrade formula.
Yeah, just
literally
like
the sound effect.
Yeah, and it's just, and you're obviously there with a frying pan juggling.
It's
It's quite
you,
funny. And of course you can make it more difficult for yourself by having something that maybe doesn't charge the ball, so you can just have a stick to juggle it if you wanted to make it harder for yourself when you play the game. Almost like they have difficulties for different skill levels.
It's called accessibility.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Later on. So I was playing that and really enjoyed it, and and again, which makes it more accessible, is if you get to a point where you see a lot of turrets pop up or like laser grids kill you, you can then work your way through the level again. But in working your way through the level, all the doors will be charged, so you can either just run through and just avoid. It's easy enough to avoid as long as you're not, because the difficulty comes from standing still to solve the puzzles. So you can peg it through the levels you've already done up to where you were, and try that part again. Or you can do some of the earlier levels again, because obviously you've already opened the door, so the power you generate you keep. So you can do those again and then skip that later puzzle. Use all the power to skip that one. So no matter if you're really good or really bad, you're always making progress, just in a slightly different way.
But you've got more power to manage your progress.
Yes,
That's pretty
really good. Really well designed game, and really fun. And quite unique in the kind of pinball dungeon crawler aspects. And it's a really good atmosphere because, of course, you've got this kind of, it's like this sort of ruined sort of industrial complex you're going through. It's kind of like really nice cel shaded graphics as well, and then you've got this like weird creature taunting you, and there are cool boss battles as well, so that's cool. And the last one before we go on to the chat is Surge 2. So I got Surge 2, and it reminded me of Decay of Logos I played, where the respawning enemies and the difficulty just kind of killed it for me, because I just felt like I was having no impact on the game world. On the Surge 2, apparently I've never played the Surge. I remember it coming out in like 2016-17, thinking that looks awesome, reading about it, seeing Dark Souls clone,
sci-fi Dark Souls,
pushing it to one side. So when this came out, I thought it really does look good, and I was watching the trailer, the combat looked really good and clunky, and it was like, it made out it was an open world, not strictly true. And I thought, I'm going to give this a go. So I played it, and it is like Dark Souls, but it's the best version of a Dark Souls game I've played, because the combat is kind of really weighty. So you're a guy, you're in a plane crash, losing memory, good, and you start off with just these sort of defibrillator pads on your hands, and then you slowly get into like an exosuit, and that's when the game kind of picks up. So the whole thing is about upgrading your suit, and there's so many upgrades you can get that kind of, you can have, like I went for, because the combat is very strategic, so you'll come up against someone, and you can attack their head or their arms and legs that are armored. You can kind of choose body parts, and if you cut off an armored part, you keep that for yourself. But of course that makes the fight more difficult, because you're cutting off an armored part. Whereas if you go for like the head or the body that's unprotected, you still get like a bit of scrap, which is what you need to kind of upgrade everything. But when they die, they burst into flames, so you lose the chance of getting a decent upgrade off them. So it's all about risk and reward.
That's quite clever.
Yes, it's really good. So I was playing it through, and for the first hour I was playing it, and I was just getting my ass kicked, and I thought, oh right, this is just isn't, okay, here we go. But then I kind of locked into how the combat worked, and got like some cool weapons and nice upgrades, and you get like a drone that can help you out. And I realised that although I was dying and restarting, I wasn't gritting my teeth. I was thinking, right, this time, which is what you want. And I must admit, now I'm about 9 hours into it, I am hitting a point where I think, right, this is getting challenging. But it is good, and the way that it's kind of really labyrinthine. So you'll start off, you'll see a gate that's locked to your left, and you can go like 6 different ways, and you properly creep around. Like you're obviously the way you kind of do have this stupid strut as you wander around, you're just in this huge rig. But when you see someone in this like ruined wasteland, and they're like dragging a huge metal pipe behind them on the floor, and they're just gonna swing at you and take about 15 minutes. Then you're like, I can take him out because I can dart away. You get the drone, so it kicks in. But then as you go to him, someone might walk out of an alley, and you're like, oh, 2 of you, this is challenging. So you kind of learn as you go through, and it doesn't feel like trial and error because you can run away and they stop chasing after a while.
Okay.
Unlike the Cave logos, so you can run back sort of to your little hub, and of course when you use the med bay to upgrade or save, everything respawns. But because it's actually only a few enemies between routes and save points, if you go somewhere and just get nailed, you can think, right, there's 4 guys over there with like turrets and stuff, I'll go this way instead, and you can manage your way forwards.
Yeah.
So it's the best
Once
version.
you get to know the environment.
Yes, you have to get to know the environment. And it's really well designed because everything's quite claustrophobic, like, because obviously when you're fighting someone and you want to be like darting around them and managing your stamina, what you don't want is to come up against 3 guys in an alleyway, because they're just going to rush you and you can't manage it. So you do have to really pick your battles, and it almost feels a little bit turn-based in that way. So yeah, really, really good game. The best Dark Souls game I've played yet, and that leads us on to our discussion.
Because the way you described getting the game kind of clicked for you once you got into the rhythm of the combat. I mean, aren't there going to be those, i.e. Dark Souls fans, who are going to say, well, that's what the appeal of Dark Souls, the Dark Souls series is from software games, is that actually once the combat clicks, then it's the best thing ever, sort of thing.
But with Dark Souls, from what I've played of it, which admittedly is much, the whole game is weighted against you. And there are like huge gaps between like the bonfires and stuff. So it's like with the Surge, it's so compact, it doesn't feel like a grind.
Right. Okay. It does sound like it's a better balance. I mean, I probably played Lords of the Fallen more than I did Dark Souls, but the problem with that is that the distance between the save points was great enough for me not to bother once I died and then everything respawned. I thought, right, I can see the 6 or 7 enemies I have to defeat, and it's just going to take me about 20 minutes. Yeah, I can't be bothered.
But with this though, the good thing, because of the risk and reward thing, is like you'll go down there and you'll think, right, I know I've got to go down this alleyway, and someone will come out and there's 3 guys there, but I can manage those, and then I'll pick up 1,000 tech scrap, and then you might get the next one. I think actually I lost a lot of health there, and I've run out of like the battery which you get from killing enemies to heal yourself. I'm going to go back and save, and those enemies will respawn, but I'll be 2,000 tech scrap better off, so I can upgrade my armor a little bit, maybe my drone, and then have another go, and then maybe that time I'll be able to get through. Yeah. So you can manage it, your progress. Yeah. It's not like you hit someone, you're dead, and that's it. You just have to get past him.
The Dark Souls difficulty.
Well, the dialogue's dreadful, by the way. Yeah. When you're in like the little hub towns and you kind of talk to people, the dialogue's just dreadful, but it's quite minimalist. They're there to say, can you if you see this bloke, can you kill him on the way and come back and I'll give you something. So the narrative doesn't matter. It's the gameplay that's the draw.
So the whole Dark Souls difficulty thing is problematic for me, because like that sounds quite. It sounds like a bit of a better balance. Yeah. I mean, the problem has always been for me how punishing these games are. They seem like a grind, as in they're almost designed so that you're going to do the same section over and over again to perfect, to hone your skills, etc., which is fine. And then until you come across the next enemy who has completely different attack patterns, you have to get used to them, keep trying over and over again. Yeah. And which is fine, but it's not for me because I haven't got the patience
or time.
Yeah, or time indeed. So yeah, that's the problem. But the bigger problem, which I think is where we're going with this conversation, is that there are those who strongly resist even the idea of, say, a From Software game having an easy mode or an accessible mode, a story mode, if you like.
But the thing is, I always think of like Ben Croshaw as an example of this, because I know Dark Souls is one of his favourite games and he often references it. And and he loved it at the point. I thought, I'm going to give this a try, and I played it, and like I just thought, this isn't for me. It's just too difficult. I couldn't like lock into what I was supposed to do. I just found the whole thing just really a tiresome grind. But then when you kind of look at the story and the design of it, you think, actually, it's this kind of distant, really gothic world. It sounds like the kind of game I'd love to play through.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing. I'd love to explore that world.
To experience them, especially because there's like 3 or 4 Dark Souls games now. But what I don't understand is that elitism, because if there's an easy mode, if there's a story, say there's a mode where enemies just don't respawn. So like that's all they have to do. All these games, if they just have enemies that don't respawn, that's it. That's all they would have to do.
Completely knock out the balance of the game, but does that matter
to you if you want to play it a different way? The thing is, there have been easy, medium, hard difficulties for like, 40 years or whatever in games.
Yeah.
So, and I understand that you said that there are people who say, if we bring up this conversation, they would say, oh, you're just not good enough. It's just, it's not for you. That's the way the game is. Deal with it. But that's fine, because I could happily live the rest of my life without playing those games. But I don't understand what those people have against just having a mode that takes away the grind element.
It's a form of elitism.
Much like I believe in the Final Fantasy remasters, not the 7 and 8 that they're doing now, but when they re-released it, my brother said they had a mode where you press the shoulder buttons, and you can either turn off random battles entirely, or just up all of your attacks to like 9999. Right. So every boss you can just kind of pound through. So you can experience the game. Yeah. And I don't see and he said, I didn't do it because he said at some point random battles, it's like, okay, it's a bit boring, I'll flick them off for an hour and then back on when I get to a new area and there's new enemies, because he likes that. I don't. One of the reasons I stopped playing Final Fantasy games is because I was just fed up with spending like 90 hours grinding.
I point to Celeste as well, which is a very, very hard platform game, as we all know. However, in the options menu, it's got an accessibility menu where you can switch various things off or on. You can slow the game down. You can give yourself an extra jump in midair, maybe 2 extra jumps in midair. You can tweak the game to be as challenging as you wish it to be. That's not the default. The default mode is the way the game is meant to be played. Yeah. If it's too challenging, you can turn those things on. I played it without any of those things on and had a great time with it, but I didn't resent the fact that they were there. It did not make any difference to me, the fact that there were accessibility options for other people. The other example was, I remember when Star Fox Zero came out. I mean, I know not many people enjoyed that game except me.
Was that on the GameCube?
Wii U, naturally. It's really, really awkward controls.
Oh, right, yes, I remember that. Yeah.
But in that, they added, might have been, I don't think it was there from the start. There was a no-death mode where it's just effectively we couldn't die. It was basically for kids to just kind of like fly around and shoot stuff without any risk of dying.
That's cool.
And there was a bit of a hullabaloo about that, even though...
But you can turn it off.
You do not have... It's not like... Okay, if they take the game, if they took the core game and then suddenly made it so you couldn't die, yes, that would be a reason to be annoyed about it. If putting the option in shouldn't be an issue, which is why we come back to the From Software games. I really want to play Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
Yes.
And I suppose I'd quite like to play like the Dark Souls games as well, but I will never play them until there is a more accessible option. And I know the answer, I know the response to that is often like, well, it's just not for you then. But is that true though? Because in a way it is for me, because I love the art style. Yeah. I love the look of it.
I even like a minimalist story kind of fragmentedly told.
I love the idea of like quite tactical, kind of heavy, clunky combat, that sort of thing. What I just don't like is the punishing nature of the of failure in these sorts of games.
And also, I do get put off by elitism in anything. So the fact that there exists a culture of elitism around that genre just makes me think, really? Because what I don't get is, like you say, if they had a story mode in... We'll just use Dark Souls as an example, it's kind of the archetype. So you've got Dark Souls story mode in it. Surely, all the people who really love the lore and the games and discuss it at length, hours on forums, surely it would be nice to have someone to like bring more people into that. So, and maybe if I'm playing it and I'm playing it through on like the story mode, say, when nothing respawns, that's all they have to do. And then when you get to a boss, I'm struggling. Like you can... can help each other out and talk about it.
I think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it would be better for like From Software because they would sell more copies.
I guess it's like a badge of honour though, isn't it? If you can say that you've beaten Dark Souls, you know you've got to be really good. Whereas someone could say, "I've beaten Dark Souls, what, on story mode?" But
that's fine. I mean, they can be fists in that way.
Well, but also just from a pure business perspective, I don't understand it. Because here's the thing, right? If you're From Software, okay, if you put an easy mode into one of your games, I don't believe that the number of people, elitist idiots, because there aren't actually that many of them, probably, they're just loudest, but the amount of elitist people who would boycott From Software,
they would as well.
Well, they'd say they would, and then pre-order the next one. But the amount of people who would actually genuinely boycott the game is surely smaller in number to the number of people who would be brought into the game because of this new accessible pathway.
Yeah.
So just from a business perspective, it seems to make sense to me. I don't know how it... Maybe they just think they're kind of looking at balancing it up and it's like, well, does this damage the brand sort of thing? But, you know, it's not as poisonous as something like loot boxes or something like that, which genuinely can damage a brand.
Yeah. But it's a weird thing, isn't it? And I don't see the problem with it. I don't see the problem in just making a game more accessible for more people to enjoy.
It really is that simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it just seems baffling. And it'd be interesting to see if, I mean, now what the first Dark Souls game, or Demons, whatever it was released in like 2008 or 9. So it's over, the brand is over a decade old now. And it'd be interesting if they, in one of the newer games, they did say, we're going to chuck in a more accessible mode. I'd enjoy the backlash because when that seal is broken, because they kind of drive that market for that genre, everyone else would kind of follow suit and think, oh, you know, if they're doing it, that's cool, we can do that, and then sell more copies and more people can enjoy the game.
Yeah, like, because from my perspective, there's a potential sale of that game to me, which isn't happening right now.
I would be interested to have a conversation with someone who has the polar opposite view to us on this, and I'd be interested to see how long they could hold the conversation without getting angry or just relying on elitism. I don't think there's another argument for it.
I don't think so. I've seen arguments like, oh, well, it's just not for you, you know.
Yeah, but I want it to be for me.
And I'm still not sure that really holds water anyway. Like, it's like, they'll say, I've seen arguments like, you know, you wouldn't expect Yoshi's Crafted World to have a hard mode in it.
But if it did, I wouldn't care.
But it wouldn't make a difference if it did.
No.
And also,
it's
not really a similar thing anyway, because actually, I'm not sure about Yoshi's Crafted World, but Yoshi's Woolly World, I have to say, fine, it's easy to complete. You can finish that, and that has a no deaths mode basically, where you can just fly along everything. Fine, but if you want to collect everything in that game, that is challenging. That is very, very difficult. Same as like Super Mario Odyssey. You could breeze through that game, but you try and collect everything. It's an absolute.
Well, this is the Nintendo.
That's
really good
that scalability of accessibility.
You've played Heave Home, right?
Yes.
That game is fun. So you're playing and you're chucking each other along. If you want to go through and collect every one of those keys, best of luck to you. You're going to be there for thousands of hours because it's just so impossible. Because you have to do everything one-handed, effectively, constantly, not just getting from one level to the other, but juggling it and catching it and moving. It's just you need such perfect dexterity. And with the Mario, going through and collecting every single hidden coin or whatever. Like, I don't do that, but then I don't say, oh, I don't want this game to be hard, I want it to be accessible, so take away all the collectibles so I feel like I can 100% it.
Yeah.
It's a strange way to look at it.
And I'd be quite impressed if someone did in Super Mario Odyssey collect everything, I'd be like, that's cool, well done.
Well, fair play.
But, yeah, I guess the difference is that a game like Super Mario Odyssey, say, which obviously we're not comparing directly to like Dark Souls, but what we're talking about is the entry point. The entry point is down here, so it's like very gentle. The entry point for a Dark Souls game, From Software game, is somewhere up here. And so then the kind of difficulty ceiling's up there. The difficulty ceiling might be the same for both of them, if you see what I mean, but it's a different entry points.
Yeah.
I don't see what the problem is with bringing the entry point down here.
Yeah. Maybe we're just not hardcore gamers. It's another term I hate.
We're not real gamers. We're just casuals.
Yeah. Anyway, we better wrap this up so we can go back to Candy Crush Saga, which I've just paid my way through. So yeah, it would be nice to, but I don't think it's going to change. But it's nice to just get it off our chests because, but then even with like the Surge, the fact that it's got mechanics built into it that allow for someone like me who isn't just gonna. But like
it's got hundreds of hours to grind into it.
Yeah, grinding and mastering it because I just haven't got the time for that, and it feels good that it. And there's you can do like tags. So when you play it online, if people have certain banners of themselves, you click on it, you get tech scrap and stuff, which helps out. But also they can put marks on the floor, like they'll say if there's an alleyway, there'll be like a graffiti mark on the floor or wall that says like, oh, there's toxic down here, or you'll get jumped by 2 guys.
Yeah.
So it seems
kind of like those things in Dark Souls where it's like, do you trust what this person's saying?
Yeah, but it just seems like I was never misled in the 10 hours I played it.
Oh.
So it just seems like a much more friendly culture as well.
Were you playing a pre-release copy though?
Yeah, but then I played it after release as well.
Okay. So
Which is quite cool actually because there was so many more tags and stuff. I said to you that when I was playing it, the pre-release review copy, I saw a couple of tags by Jim Sterling, which was quite cool. So, but then yeah, it was so much more full of graffiti when it was released. It was just quite nice. Just quite nice to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fully intend to keep on playing the Surge 2 and just trying to get my way through it slowly at my own pace because it's well designed.
So would you say that's your game of the week?
Yeah, I would. Deadly Premonitions, I just find it really endearing. But it's Surge 2 or Creature in the Well as a very honourable mention because it's a really cool game. But I would Surge 2 just because it was like a way into the genre for me.
Yeah,
which was nice, and I really appreciate the fact that it's accessible because it is a bit of a point of contention.
Yeah.
What's your game of the week?
Link's Awakening, but patch it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.